about slavery, but few discuss paper genocide. We did not all come from Africa, and most of us have Aboriginal roots that were stripped away due to reclassification and miseducation. As a Native Black American and a member of the Muscogee Creek Nation, I understand the importance of tracing your lineage. If you want to learn how to trace your genealogy and apply for tribal citizenship, send an email to mike@keymediapro.com to schedule a consultation.
I am not a slave, I was born to slide, I am not afraid. Hop about the K, oh yeah, free to God, they went out of state. I'm a child of God, I do not belong to the United States. Fuck Black History, tell Uncle Sam he can catch a fade. I went to hell, I mean school, graduated at the top of my class. Still never thought I was over my peers. We did that time together 12 years. Ain't that some movie? I think that it is. They won't control me, I'm really a member. I traveled that road, I came back with the jewels from. When I pull up, they pee how the roof going. We some dog killers, won't chew bones. Know we all spit on, we supreme. Somewhere I read a nigga had a dream.
You don't have to try to be something you're not.
God, I can't stand this. Trying to be something I'm not? Trying to be proud of my African heritage? If that's being something I'm not, then fine.
My grandmother was a full-blooded Iroquois. My grandfather was a black from a long line of journeymen who lived in Connecticut since the establishment of the colonies. My father was a Bajan who came to this country a cabin boy in a merchant marina.
I know all of that, Mama.
Then know this. I am alive because of the blood of a people who never scraped or begged or apologized for what they were. They asked only one thing of this world: to be allowed to be. I gave you my grandmother's name, a woman who bore 9 children and educated them all. Who held off 6 white men with a shotgun when they tried to drag one of her sons off to jail for not knowing his place. And you had to reach into an African dictionary to find a name that would make you proud.
I was born black, I live black, and I'm gonna die probably because some cracker that knows I'm black better than you, nigga, is probably gonna put a bullet in the back of my head.
This is the remix. My father was raised in the era when black niggas couldn't claim Native American. Making music would've thought I had help, but the Indians I know wanna be the chief they self.
Personalized one-on-one genealogy consultations for $75, but understanding that times are tough, from hurricanes to rising prices, I wanted to find a way to help further. In honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, I'm offering a special opportunity this week, a group consultation for just $35 for those who may not be able to book a one-on-one consultation. You'll still receive the same valuable information as in a private meeting. The only difference is that you'll be learning and asking questions in a group setting with fellow participants on a virtual call. To schedule a $35 group consultation, please email mike@keymediapro.com and include group consultation in the subject line. Looking forward to connecting with you.
What is the lesson? What is this telling us?
Well, there are several things that are significant about it. Of course, one of them is the way that colonialism tries to develop all kinds of elaborate classification terms for different kinds of people. But that's another subject. The most significant thing here is to reveal the much greater amounts of Native American ancestry that are present within the African American population than most people realize, because they might have been misled by the use of terms like mulatto, and also people of color. Colored people included Native Americans, for example, in the United States area.
They don't want you to remember this. You not no slave, you indigenous. Fuck how they painted them Indians. You went to war with the French and the British, man. Quite frankly, you was kings, Merovingians. They took the women and men, made them prisoners, raised up the children to worship their images, set up a lab to the genes and they mixed them, and this shit get way deeper than your pigment.
All right. Hit the like button on the way in. Subscribe if you're new to the program. And let's get on with the content. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day to everybody out there. This broadcast is a bit of a celebration, and also to highlight the fact that most Black Americans should be celebrating this day. I mean, I know a lot of you guys still haven't done your genealogy. A lot of us, have undergone a paper genocide. So it's a very uphill battle, oftentimes, for us to get in touch with our roots. But when we do the paper trail research, we find that most of us have Aboriginal ties. And just like it took people quite a long time to realize Columbus wasn't some benevolent traveler, but actually a demon of sorts, well, it's taken Black Americans some time to get reconnected with our Aboriginal heritage. But as you can see, on a national scale, this is becoming a discussion about genealogy, whether it's Kamala Harris and the whole controversy that Candace Owens is revealing about her cosplaying, if you will, to many of other issues, whether it's the migrants coming over here and cosplaying as us just because they share some melanin as well. It seemed to become a nationwide discussion over heritage, history, and culture. I mean, the Drake and Kendrick beef was all about that, right? So, in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, I want to do this broadcast to shed some light on Native Black American history and culture, and also to inform you guys that in honor of the celebration, I'm doing a special promotion this week where if you're not able to book a personalized one-on-one consultation at the $75 rate, I am going to provide group consultations for this week and this week only for only $35. So go ahead and take advantage of the promotion. If you do the group consultation, you're still going to get access to the same valuable information as if it was a one-on-one consultation. The only difference is this is going to be in a group setting. There'll be, a few other people on the call, just like it's a group Zoom call, if you will. But go ahead and take advantage of that promotion if a one-on-one consultation is a little bit outside of your budget. But let's get on with some receipts. You guys call me the king of receipts after all. So the first thing that I really want to highlight, being that I'm a California native, is some of the Native Black American history within the region of California. This is a great primary source that I share with you guys quite frequently. This is a book called The Philosophical and Antiquarian Aboriginal History of America. It was compiled in the early 1800s in London. And this book is basically a compilation of different journals from Spanish conquistadors who traveled to the California coast as early as 1492. These are conquistadors such as Vizcaino, Torquemada, Cortez, etc. So let's take a look at what these Europeans said they saw when they came over here. Was it some Mongoloid Asian-looking natives, or was it some Black folks? We're going to go ahead and take a look, y'all. Let's take a look. It says right here, though America possesses some dark brown men approaching to be Black, yet it has been almost universally believed that there were no Aboriginal Blacks or Negroes found on this continent. But from considering the peculiar circumstances under which a Black race was found in North America, I hold it more than probable that the common opinion is erroneous. So in layman's terms, they're saying, hey, none of us really think that there's Black Aboriginals in the Americas, but we did find a Black race across the entire continent of North America. So we got to admit, there's Black Aboriginals. Torquemada says, the Californians showed no manner of surprise at the sight of some Negroes that accompanied Vizcaino on a village to this coast. Because again, guys, you have to realize that when the Spaniards were coming to America, or excuse me, the Americas, they traveled with North African Moorish guides. And they're saying here that they originally had contact with California natives that were not the richly melanated Black folks. These are the fair-skinned natives. And as a fair-skinned native, if you've never seen a Negro or a Black person or someone with rich melanin, then you would be surprised. You would be perplexed. Just like how the Chinese people, when you go to China, are trying to touch your hair and rub on your skin, right? So it says right here that within Californians showed no manner of surprise at the sight of some Negroes that accompanied Vizcaino on the voyage to the coast. But if you skip down a few lines, it goes further. It says when a Negro was ordered to distribute a biscuit to the Californians at the Bay of St. Barnabas, quote, the natives seemed greatly pleased at the sight of the Negro, and they signified to him that they lived in friendship and correspondence with the people of his color, and that not far from thence was a Negro village. Come on, y'all. Come on. So at first, the Spanish are like, nah, there's no Aboriginal blacks. Then they're like, okay, we found a bunch of black folks in the Americas. There are Aboriginal blacks. They go to California. They see some light skinned natives. The light skinned natives see the Negro Moorish guides the Spanish have with them. And they say, hey, that's dope. We got some black friends. Check it out. We got a whole village of black natives just down the way. Let me show you. Come on. And even back then, the Spanish were differentiating and delineating black Aboriginals of the Americas from Africans. If we skip to a couple pages right here, it says, from the plates and chorus voyages of which I had but a slight examination, they appear to resemble very nearly the blacks of Hindustan. Hindustan is India. You know that Indians in India can get quite black. I mean, there's a lot of Indians that are blacker, darker, more melanin than even me. I mean, there's some Indians that is just as dark as some Africans, right? So it's saying right here, hey, we see these black natives in the Americas, and they kind of resemble the blacks of Hindustan, of whom a few Marathas only have fallen under my personal observation. But it is well known that many of the Hindu race are only distinguished by straightness of hair from the Africans. So again, plain English. They're saying, hey, these black natives, these black Aboriginals in the Americas, they kind of look like the Hindus. They got some melanin. And we know that the Hindus look just like the Africans. The only main difference between an African and a dark-skinned Hindu is that Hindus have straight hairs and Africans have curly hairs on their head. So even back then, even in 1492, we have European Spaniards delineating and differentiating between the Aboriginal blacks of the Americas and Africans and Hindus. Let's talk about it. The reclassification efforts, most people don't realize, have been going on since 1682. Virginia in 1682 passed two acts that combined Native Americans and Africans into one category as Negroes and other slaves. So clearly we're talking about some melanated Aboriginals, because if we're talking about some light-skinned Mongoloid-looking natives, well, hey, wait a minute. How do you take somebody like this and reclassify them as an African? You can't. How do you take somebody like this and reclassify them as an African? You can't. But if you're talking about the Aboriginal blacks that mostly had territory on the East Coast and down south from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico, if you're talking about those Aboriginal blacks that look like this, well, we can see how they can reclassify these folks as African. Hey, they both got some melanin, somewhat similar features. We can see how they can reclassify people that look like this as African. But you can't reclassify this as an African, nor can you reclassify this as an African. I mean, girl looks like her mama's Elizabeth Warren and her daddy's Genghis Khan. But the Aboriginals of the Americas that were melanated, not the immigrants that came across the Bering Strait all those years ago, but the true black Aboriginals that look like this, oh yeah, they can start some reclassification efforts in 1682 and start lumping them into the same category as Africans. And when we talk about the Spanish bringing Moorish, North African guides and vassals, let's go ahead and get into that history a little bit, because it does play a part in the reclassification.
Had already controlled islands and ports off the coast of Africa long before 1492. On record, before 1510, less than 1,000 slaves had been brought from Africa. But even a significant portion of those so-called Africans had been born in Spain. So up until this year, the so-called Africans were essentially Spanish vassals. According to a royal decree of King Fernando, the first few Africans in America were Spanish-born captives taken as spoils from the Moorish Empire, who had converted to Christianity. A statute of King Fernando, who eventually vacated the Spanish-born requirement after 1520. Over the next century, the Spanish controlled a few successful colonies on the island, deporting droves of Indians to Spanish and Portuguese-controlled territories. Even with the introduction of African-born slaves to the island, enslaved Indians outnumbered Africans more than 1,000 to 1. At the same time, more Indians were being sent to Africa than Africans being sent to the Indies. Quote from Jack Forbes. The clarification of the meanings of color and racial terms. The greater part of this study has been taken up with the extremely crucial task of showing that the modern European and North American tendency to be obsessed with black and white relations to the near exclusion of multi-ethnic and in-time depth comparative perspectives has led to significant distortions in the use of color and racial terms such as colored, black, Negro, mulatto, musty, pardo, loro, and several others.
Evening, I had a consultation, a genealogy consultation to figure out my Native American ancestry. And I was given a lot of valuable information this evening, from the origin of the tribes to the different ethnic breakdown to how everything was ran and colonized before, the discovery of Columbus, and after he came over here. So I think that you will find the value in the information as I did.
To clarify the evolution of many of these terms, insofar as they bear upon American-African relations. In general, I am able to show that all of these terms have been historically applicable to persons of American ancestry, and that one cannot read back into previous centuries the current dictionary definitions of such words without serious error. And remember the 1828 definition of an American. Continuing, of considerable significance has...
Come on, y'all. Most people don't realize that the 1820s definition of an American was a native of America originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races. Guess what? This is not copper-colored, nor is this copper-colored. But this is, just like this is, and we can keep going, and we can keep going.
The documentation that Americans were often called Negroes, blacks, Negroes, and Morin. Of considerable significance, there has been documentation that Americans were often called Negroes, blacks, Negroes, and Morin in various languages, along with other non-white peoples, and that it is very dangerous to assume each person referred to as Negro or black was African. It is especially pertinent to the analysis relating to the character of slaves being shipped from or within the Americas.
Let's talk about it. Shout out to Deformed Pretty Boy. He says, what's the name of the book you were reading, Mike? Was that The Voyage of the Pacific? No, the book was The Philosophical and Antiquarian Aboriginal History of America. That's a great book right there if you guys want to check it out.
It's being shipped from or within the Americas. Also of great significance has been our showing that mulatto in several languages included persons half or part American ancestry, and that in the Spanish colonies in the Americas, most mulattoes in the 16th and 17th centuries were of American African background, not European African background. Generally speaking, it would seem that mulatto referred to a person who was part African and part non-African. But in French and North American colonial English, mulatter and mulatto would refer to a European American mixed blood. This is also true of mulat in Dutch. The evidence also shows that Native Americans were commonly referred to as people of color, or its equivalent in various languages. So Native Americans used to be called people of color or colored, black, and Negroes. Continuing, the evidence shows that Native Americans were commonly referred to as people of color or its equivalent in various languages. This is of great significance for the social history of the United States, Brazil, Argentina, and the Americas in general, since it has been often assumed that people of color in the United States or pardos in Brazil should be regarded as Negroes.
Come on, y'all. How many of you guys realize that they called the Native Americans people of color, Negro, mulatto, the same exact terms that they would later reclassify us as? I mean, it's such a coincidence, right? It's such a mystery. When we start doing the reading, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, now you guys see why we were restricted from doing basic things like reading and writing, because as soon as we start reading some documents, oh yeah, we start seeing through the bullshit.
Of black identity. It has been shown that it is historically unsound to ignore the possible American ancestry of people referred to in sources as colored, pardos, and so on. This is also true of people called mulattoes, as discussed above. The collective significance of these findings consists principally in their creating an absolute obligation for the radical revision of our views relative to the nature of the modern post-1500 repeopling of the Americas. In addition, however, these findings require that a new critical look be taken at some of the most common notions current regarding the history of race relations, slavery, the evolution of plantation societies, and the development of free colored populations in the Americas. End quote. Jack Forbes.
But in the West Indies particularly, we see an example after example in Spanish royal decrees and the definitions that are given by Spanish officials as well as by Native American writers. The term mulatto means primarily black and Native American, not black and white, but black and Native American. Turning to the French colonies, we also find that the term mulat or its equivalent in French was used for people of American, Native American, and French ancestry, even without any African ancestry, in the Louisiana area, for instance. And the same thing is true in the British colonies along the Atlantic seaboard. In Virginia in 1705, for instance, the government decrees that the child of an Indian will be known as a mulatto. That is, a person who's half white and Indian, half African and Indian will be a mulatto.
Let me cut you off here because we don't want to keep you here all day. The significance of this being what? What is the lesson? What is this telling us?
Well, there are several things that are significant about it. Of course, one of them is the way that colonialism tries to develop all kinds of elaborate classification terms for different kinds of people, but that's another subject. The most significant thing here is to reveal the much greater amounts of Native American ancestry that are present within the African American population. Greater amounts of Native American ancestry that are present within the African American population is to reveal the much greater amounts of Native American ancestry that are present within the African American population than most people realize, because they might have been misled by the use of terms like mulatto and also people of color. Colored people included Native Americans, for example, the African American population, than most people realize, because they might have been misled by the use of terms like mulatto and also people of color. Colored people included Native Americans. Also people of color. Colored people included Native Americans. Also people of color. Colored people included Native Americans.
Yeah, I had to run that back for the one time, y'all. I had to run that back. And shout out to Seduction Doll. Nice to see you. But clearly, guys, the reclassification efforts, the paper genocide, I mean, it's been going on for centuries and centuries, generations and generations. But what I want to segue to next is going to be some footage from Chief Sekou. If you guys are long-term viewers, you know that I've brought forth some footage of Chief Sekou in the past. So let's go ahead and introduce you guys to a Native Black American chief, if it's your first time.
The scheduling, getting all this stuff coordinated on a short notice. I appreciate you greatly for that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you, Caleb. And I mean, I really appreciate being here, and thank you for inviting. And I know our schedule has been it's been real hectic. You know, we try to make it work.
Yes.
Yeah, man. So thank you, and thank your team for everything that they're doing.
Much love. Chief, what's your name? Pronunciations, right? In the South, you know, people, they can drag A's, E's, things like that. Can you please break down how names are supposed to be pronounced in phonetics?
No problem. So first and foremost, our people speak Hichiti. Our people speak Hichiti. It's a Totanic Mayan language that's been forgotten amongst most. But it's still spoken partially spoken amongst the Miccosukee people, which are identified as Seminoles. And that's what we are. We're Seminoles. So, Animiki Siku, Holem Hachita Lame Yamasi Hajo, Miku Yamasi Yate, Miku Fusi, Erepaka Hajo.
Hey, the Tethers, the Mexicans, the Africans, the palm colored people, the first thing they want to say when you say you're Native is, oh, you don't look like a Native. The second thing they want to hit you with is, oh, but do you speak your tribal language? So next time somebody asks you about a Black person speaking their tribal language, go ahead and refer them to Chief Sekou.
Speak Hichiti. Our people speak Hichiti. It's a Totanic Mayan language that's been forgotten amongst most. but it's still spoken amongst, well, partially spoken amongst the Miccosukee people, which are identified as Seminoles. And that's what we are. We're Seminoles. So, Animiki, Siku, Holem Hachitalame.
And I got to do a whole stream about Central and South America and how the Mayans and the Aztec were Black Aboriginals. I mean, we know about the statue of the Olmecs, right? I mean, come on. When we talk about Aboriginals of the Americas, we're talking about Alaska, Canada, North America, Central and South, as well as the Caribbean islands. So when we get into the research, we learn that Black folks been here for eons.
Masi Hajo, Mikuya Masi Yate, Mikui Fusi, Erepaka Hajo, Tukasia Matle. This is my heritage. And what it was traditionally when you met a Native person, they would identify themselves, their bloodline, and their honor. And their honor is their grandfathers and those who they that were warriors. So in my situation, what I just said was I am Siku Hajo, or Siku Hidden Eagle of the Yamasee Indian tribe. I'm the chief of the Yamasee Nation, and my grandfathers are Arapuka, which is also known as Sam Jones, and Tukasia Motley, also known as John Hicks. And so I have a heritage which spans on both sides of my family, which is why I'm considered a full blood. So John Hicks, Tukasia Motley, didn't necessarily have the best history, but that's on my mother's side. On my father's side, I'm Jones, which is Sam Jones. So a part of the Native heritage and culture is always starting the conversation out with the language and identifying yourself.
That's beautiful. Growing up, here in the South, so many people have stories of Big Mama, telling us, hey, know that y'all have like Native blood in you. And, sometimes we'll try to like throw that aside. She's just talking. I know that slave ships is a real big thing too. How many of us do you feel like Black people are actually native to this landmass?
It's crazy. So for your watchers and listeners, so much of the history has been taken away from us, and so much of it is relevant that we fall victim and prey to the narrative that was given to us through the education system.
For sure.
So we have to identify and address that first. That a lot of what we believe is taught to us. Now, if we take the fact that those who was teaching us kept us out of their educational system.
That's right.
Right? They did it purposely.
Yeah.
This was them teaching their grandchildren and their grandfathers, and they were teaching their children their history. So a lot of what we learned was them perpetuating what they wanted us to know, but not in the sense of truth and facts. The truth and facts lied into the narratives that they.
And shout out to JD for the excellent book recommendation. JD says, please read the book. Black People Are Native to the Americas, research material for the inquisitive. I actually just researched that book. This is where you guys can find it on Amazon. It looks like some great resources that this lady Kimberly has compiled here. She's citing sources, providing facts, no opinion. We got introduction, Giovanni De Verazio, Bartholomew Gosnold, George Weymouth, Martin Pring, all the way down to South America, Christopher Columbus, American Indians, Mayans, Canada, general ethnology. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to cop this one right here. Only $7. All right. Hopefully I can get an online version. You guys make sure to check out the book. Shout out again to JD for the excellent book recommendation. And let's get back to hearing what the chief has to say. And shout out to the Yamasee tribe. Most people don't know that they went to war with Andrew Jackson for several years. It was called the Seminole Wars. They refused to be relocated to Indian Territory. They refused to give their Black tribal members to slave catchers that were going to send them to plantations. So they banged on the American government and Andrew Jackson in particular. And when they finally conceded and went to Oklahoma, the only way that they were going to go, they said, is if they were able to carry their guns on them. And they did just that.
They provided within the documentation that they gave in their memoirs.
Oh, wow. That's
right.
Good. Yeah.
So we aren't being educated on the memoirs of the colonists. We're being educated on the system that they provided that says this is what you need to believe because we have to support what we fabricated.
That's right.
In our justice system. And what I mean by that is those narratives where you have inside of the South Carolina journals, the Georgian journals, Native people coming to get an ear for their judicial system to say, hey, me and my children have been wrongfully put into servitude and we are Indians. That happened because the perception of what a Negro or African was. And we're not looking at this. We're not even deep diving in this because what TV says, what history says is the Indian people look this way.
There you go. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And okay, so let's do one better.
Okay.
Me and you can sit back and we'll watch a TV show, right? Where there was cowboys and Indians.
That's right.
Me and you can obviously see this is a white man pretending to be an Indian.
There you go.
We see the wigs.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And for my sisters who know, right? You know a bad lace front when you see one, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, you know, when you're looking at this, you know it. You're seeing the pigmentation, you see the makeup, you see all these different things. And we circumvent that and we forget that white people were pretending to be blacks at one time on these same movies, right? It was blackface.
Yes.
And still do.
Yeah.
So and I'm saying all this to you because the question is basically a self-answering question if we are paying attention. See, what we bank on is that we no longer pay attention. We're so caught up in our world that we're not paying attention to the obvious. We circumvent the obvious now and say, this is what they did, this is what we do because it's all about us. And so my life now is about being slayed and all these different terminologies that society have and the millennials have. But the history, the identity, the culture of your people is more important than anything else.
My name is Javaris Johnson. I work in the oil and gas industry as a truck driver. I recently just did a consultation for my genealogy with Mike at Key Media Pro. It was awesome. A lot of great information. A lot of stuff I'm going to have to go back and digest because it was so much information, man. And it really helped me to get on the path to enrolling with my tribe and learning everything, man. And it's just a great and awesome experience. You know, I encourage you guys, you know, if you're curious, to go out, do your family tree and connect with your ancestry.
Of your people is more important than anything else. Because if you don't know who you are, you have no future.
Yes, sir.
So to go back to your question, how many of us could possibly be and or are Native American? I couldn't even give you an accurate number because there were so many of us that was taken from America as Indians. This is documented to the West Indies.
Yes.
So many of us and Caribbeans, which I'm pretty sure that's going to be a question later on. So many of us that was written out as Negro, and that's a large problem within itself because we're not looking at the linguistics. Negro was not African. Negro was a description that the Spanish used. It's a Spanish word.
Black.
It's black. Right. And so anyone that was not European in color and nature was considered black. That did not mean you were not Native. Right. So much of the narrative, it gets so deep when you really deep dive into the conversation. And here's the problem. The problem lies in when you accept the fact that Big Mama said, and you say, oh, my grandmother was full-blooded and she had long flowing hair and all the different things. Right. But she don't look like the Indians of today. And you don't look like the Indians today. You don't want to talk about who you are or possibly could be, or the fact that you do have an indigenous bloodline, right? Because of what we're being shown today. So you mentioned me and my Instagram posts and things like that. And every time I open my mouth.
And let's pause real quick to highlight the main culprit of that section of the paper genocide. A lot of us have heard of Walter Plecker, but the man on the right of him is Atlas Herdlicka. Atlas Herdlicka is the one that changed the images of Native Americans, true Aboriginals of America. He's the one that changed the images from people that look like this to people who look like this. Since the 1500s, everybody that was coming to America said the Aboriginals look like this, but thanks to Atlas Herdlicka and people like Walt Disney, they change what the public thinks it means to look like a native, to be slanty eyes and Asiatic Mongoloid. No. That was due to Atlas Herdlicka. Go ahead and remember that face. Remember that name. Melville Hershkovich, the guy to the left of Walter Plecker, he's the one that created the genocidal lie that all American Negroes come from African slaves only. We're putting a face and a name to it.
off now the last post. I'm like, I'm finna get in trouble for this because I'm changing the dynamics of what history has shown us, and not doing it for me. This is not me saying this is what I believe, this is what I think. No, everything I do, I use the facts, not Black history and Black narratives. I use white history and white narrative. That's why.
Hey, talk about it. That's how you really disseminate the information. A lot of the sources I use aren't Black folks. A lot of the sources I use are Spanish conquistadors, are European anthropologists and ethnogenesis terrorists. I mean, guys, I use the white man's material against him, his own literature, his own documentation. That's the way you really get the truth out. But guys, we've got to pause the show to give a huge thanks to Big Hank for the very generous Cash App contribution. Thank you so much for your continued support, Big Hank. As a matter of fact, do me a favor, post in the chat, Big Hank. Let me know how long you've been rocking with me. I think we're over a year now. I think we may be over the year mark. Correct me if I'm wrong, but thank you for sliding something in the brown paper bag.
Brown paper bag. Brown paper bag.
Terms for different kinds of people, but that's another subject. The most significant thing here is to reveal the much greater amounts of Native American ancestry that are present within the African American population than most people realize, because they might have been misled by the use of terms like mulatto, and also people of color. Colored people included Native Americans, for example, in the United States area.
The French presence on the island didn't show face until the late 1600s. After making several attempts along with the English, they won the Pirates of the Caribbean First Act by taking advantage of Spain's overseas vulnerability due to their ongoing conflicts with the Dutch. The French slid in there, commandeering the fertile western third of the island. By 1700, the French were gradually building an empire, and the Spanish were going broke. In 1697, the Spanish signed the Treaty of Ryswick, officially recognizing the French claim. They founded Cap Français, or Cape Haitian, in 1711. Port-au-Paix was previously occupied by filibusters since the 1660s, who established a militarized foothold on the island by way of Tortuga, a small island just to the north of the Haitian mainland. Their southern port, Les Cayes, was founded in 1726, and on the western shore, Port-au-Prince was founded in 1749. From 1750 to 1770, Port-au-Prince had been wrecked multiple times by a series of earthquakes and tsunamis. Prior to this point, Saint-Domingue, the French third of the island, wasn't necessarily thriving, but things were about to change with the inception of the French-Indian War. The French had not held many slaves on the island, as their numbers were small. Some estimates say as many as 15,000, but even that figure is most likely a stretch, considering the extremely small numbers of French on the island at the time. Port-au-Prince, being their largest city, didn't reach over 10,000 people until after the year 1750. And yet, certain choice historians have taken it upon themselves to dramatically inflate the population statistics of colonial Haiti. Case in point, Michel Laguerre, or however you say this nigga's name, who said that there were over 250,000 slaves in Haiti by 1755, even though that number would be more than the entire population of Haiti is said to have prior to the 1780s by official record. Additionally, this number cannot be substantiated anywhere on the official colonial slave record. And with all due disrespect to this Aristocoon, there are plenty of other people who have embellished this number even more. I've seen numbers saying that by 1750, there were already 500,000 enslaved Africans on the island. That's right, Africans. Where are the Indians, you ask? They killed them all, apparently. Every last one of them. And not a single native left. And if there had been any native left, he definitely wasn't enslaved. Why in the hell would they import Africans all the way from Africa when they're colonizing Louisiana territory? Wouldn't it be easier to just deport the captives from the wars in Louisiana? Why would they do that? Why would they go all the way to Africa? Because, nigga. That's why. Because
just because they wet and they say so. And guys, this is why some of us have an affinity, a connection to some culture that we see throughout the Caribbean, because The first transatlantic slave trade was really them shipping American Indians to Europe, Northern Africa, and the Caribbean. There were many and many thousands of American Indians that were shipped to the Caribbean. And then when they import all of these Africans, they start mixing with one another. So a lot of these Haitians most likely do have some Aboriginal admixture as well. But let's get back to Chief Sekou.
Why it's called his story. So I use his story to tell the truth, because again, it was against the law for Negroes or Indians to read.
Yes, sir.
People don't even question that part.
Powerful. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? What were you hiding that you didn't want us to read?
It's the history and the facts.
It's the history and the facts.
Yeah.
So again, I give so much and I got so much in my head.
Yeah, please. You good.
It goes back to, again, taking the pieces of the puzzle and painting the picture for yourself, right? And so the picture says that there was a narrative, a situation that you needed to support what your cause was, right? Yeah. So we use words in a way that besuits us, that helps us. You know what I'm saying? And so to basically say to you is this: there is a large population of people of color who can readily identify their grandmothers or great-grandmothers being Native, identifying themselves as Native, because that was my story.
That's right.
Yet we walk away from it because we don't look like what we've been programmed to believe Native Americans look.
Personalized one-on-one genealogy consultations for $75. But understanding that times are tough, from hurricanes to rising prices, I wanted to find a way to help further. In honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, I'm offering a special opportunity this week, a group consultation for just $35 for those who may not be able to book a one-on-one consultation. You'll still receive the same valuable information as in a private meeting. The only difference is that you'll be learning and asking questions in a group setting with fellow participants on a virtual call. To schedule a $35 group consultation, please email mike@keymediapro.com and include group consultation in the subject line.
Now, with that, where it hurts us is because when we take the stories of Native Americans and what history says Native Americans look like through the depictions, the images, right? The written narratives, it contradicts what we see today.
That's right.
It contradicts it.
Yeah.
And you cannot put a Native American into slavery according to what they look like today and think that it wouldn't be obvious that they were slaves. They would look like the African people. They had to look like them. They had to sound like them. They had to, everything about them. And we still forget the African people that was brought over here were from tribes.
That's right.
Right? They were still rocking, the deer hides and the skins, and these were things that was customary to them. You know what I mean? No clothes. And so again, I'm trying to go back to make sure I answer your question fully. We cannot truly and honestly say how many of us exist that are Native Americans. What we can do is take the historical information that we have and use that to our advantage. And one of the things I talked about on our Instagram channel recently was the fact that they documented there was more Native American exported to the West Indies than there was Africans imported into America. And
facts. Let's talk about it. Most people don't realize that only 4% of the African slaves trafficked during the transatlantic slave trade went to North America. Over 40% went to the Caribbean. Over 60% went to South America, Brazil to be exact. So we got all these black folks in North America. We got all these Indians that they say just mysteriously disappeared, got killed off. No, what happened is you reclassified these prisoners of wars. You reclassified them. You committed a paper genocide, and over time, you raised their descendants to believe that they aren't indigenous to this land. How do you fight for a land that you don't think it's yours? Matter of fact, you guys come from Africa, so let's send you back to Africa. Wink, wink, hint, hint. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, happy Indigenous Day to you all. Don't go anywhere. As soon as this broadcast ends, there's going to be a countdown, and the next broadcast will begin automatically. I'll see you in just a moment.
They don't want you to remember this. You not no slave, you indigenous. Fuck how they painted them Indians. You went to war with the French and the British men. Quite frankly, you was kings, Merovingians. They took the women and men, made them prisoners. Raised up the children to worship their images. Set up a lab to the genes and they mixed them. And this shit get way deeper than your pigment.